Here's another story that it's so common. Why is he the only one getting this mass media, talking about? But let's talk about this dude because they're making a big deal out of it, as they should every other guy that's been doing this crap. But I didn't feel able to come forward. Chinese victims tell BBC about serial rapists. Okay. 23 more women have come forward to the police with allegations against serial rapist Zhenhao Zou, a Chinese PhD student found guilty in London last month of drugging and raping 10 women across 2 continents. And I was talking about this. It was really important in the human trafficking ring because a lot of these men were coming in from like China, Japan, Russia, Germany, you name it. And they were coming here and sexually assaulting women, and then they go back to their country. And so it's too hard anyway, because when we're dealing with the gang member sheriffs that were right next door, they were preying on women too. So you can't really do anything. I was saying that we would have been at the sheriff's department every night for assault. And so a lot of these men were coming in and out of the country. And in China, they have a lot of problems how they deal with their women. And it's hard for them to come forward as well. And I was saying it's important that we tackle it across the globe, because what is the point if you go, oh, only here they get busted, but we're going to let them do it here to the women here and then take off and then harm their own women in the other countries. And we have Democrats and other people trying to act like this is some sort of racist, or somebody's being, a certain way with a group of people. And it's like, no, that's actually part of their culture at treating women like crap, just like Americans. They just have another way of doing it over there, and they will arrest feminists. There's a whole thing on it. So it's hard for them to speak out. So it is important for us to speak out, mostly when they come here and do it. And it's important that they go after them when they're here, before they even go back, because when they go back, they just harm women over there. And then it's too hard for them to do anything right now. So we have to be together on this topic, okay? We want to save the women in China. We want to save the women in Japan. We want to save the women wherever the hell they are, okay? The police said at the conclusion of this trial, they had video evidence filmed by himself. If they didn't have this is the bullshit, because back in the day, who had video cameras, right? I was saying I was one of the rare people that had them, but then people stole my cameras. But yeah, I mean, nobody really did that. We didn't have, cell phones like they do today. And even still, who the hell's going to whip out a camera in the middle of them being assaulted? You would have to be consciously aware and near your camera. And the fact that somebody's doing that, he's probably going to make sure that he throws the camera somewhere else. You could get yourself more injured in a situation like that. But yeah, sometimes these perpetrators, they tape it, right? We were just reading the last story, and I was like, yeah, he tapes the assault and then he uses it as blackmail. So they've been trying to trace these women. So they had some videos and there were some women in it. And then detectives now say, however, they believe that Zou's offending group is far greater. So 2 women who have contacted police in the past month with new allegations have spoken to the BBC. And then one said Zou raped her in his hometown in China after spiking her drink, which left her conscious but unable to speak or move. I don't know what they've been using, all kinds of things, you guys. That's what I was saying. I go, when these things happened to me when I was younger, we didn't know. You attribute things like, God, I must have had too much to drink, like something weird. But these guys were technically spiking us, but with various different things. Like, there isn't just one thing that they've been using. The other said Zou drugged her too in London, and that she woke up to find himself filming himself. Oh, okay. So he's filming sexually assaulting her. So we also spoke to 2 women whose testimony helped convict him, who will be sentenced in June. If I'd spoken up earlier, maybe there wouldn't be so many victims after me. She and the other women say that they struggle with guilt of knowing that he assaulted so many women. Well, every woman that he assaults, you're dealing with all those people, and I'm sure a lot of people tried or they couldn't, whatever the thing is, but Two bottles on the table. So one of the women making new allegations, who we are calling Alice, told BBC that Zou had assaulted her in London in 2021 and that she had only felt able to go to the police after the trial. I didn't know that was something you could report, the Chinese national told us. See, in China, that's I have been so on this topic. I've been getting I mean, people just Dems particularly with their perverting what we're talking about with this Asian culture because if you know the culture, it's pretty damn bad. So if a woman is saying, I didn't even know this was something I could report, what does that say? They don't speak up, and that's what I was saying when I was sitting with them and they're running this human trafficking ring. They don't they're in their culture, they're not really taught to speak up against men, and they're very subservient, I guess you could call it. And they're not very vocal. And this is not across the board. Of course, there's always some in the culture that are like me and they'll speak up, but generally speaking, no, they don't. And they're very, they comply. So when they were telling them that they shouldn't talk to me or whatever the thing is, and they just do it because that's what they're being told. And mostly when they're being told in their native language and I don't speak it, so they say other things to them. And they don't realize, like, they're in a weird position because when they come into the country and let's say they're illegal, I'm not sure their legalities here. I don't think they were legal, but that's just my personal opinion on that. That when they were here, like, it's hard for them to try to go against the people that are quote unquote taking care of them. Okay, so they're not going to want to try to get out of that situation. I mean, because if it brings attention to that, and let's say they are not here illegally, then it puts them at risk of getting taken back, right? And so it kind of puts them in a sort of prison system within these abusers. And so I ended up speaking up and trying to go to the labor board. So this is how that story came about. It was kind of a long stemmed thing of abuses through this Asian culture of assholes, and they were abusing the women, and I was trying to protect everybody. Okay, so it was more on that level. And so yeah, and then so I'm assuming they're getting them here and then pimping them out to work, and then vice versa, because there's stories of women from here going over there and getting involved in the underworld of that. And so, yeah, it's a serious problem. But when you have Dems and they're going, we need their money here for, import, export. Yeah. And I was just talking about that with another guy. Yes, it's related to whatever that story was. And I was saying that I wouldn't be surprised if that guy was involved in all this too, because the manner of how he was speaking, is how they spoke inside this thing. She says she first met Zhao while out clubbing in London with other Chinese student friends. The groups all had one another on WeChat, a popular social messaging app. And not long afterwards, a mutual friend invited Alice to have drinks at his upmarket student accommodation in Bloomsbury. There were two bottles of spirits on the table, and both have already been opened and half empty. She began to share drinks from one of the bottles with her friend, but says Zoe only drank from the other one, right? And then we went through that story where Dominic Brosga did the thing with the drinks, where he has his special drink that's only water, and then everybody else got the spike drink. Yeah. And he was claiming it was Everclear, but he drank water. He's like, do you think that's bad? Oh, no, absolutely not. Alice said her friend normally tolerated alcohol well. And I was saying this too. I go, I could drink a lot of wine. I'm not a big drinker, but I know how much wine I can drink. And for me to have a couple sips and being knocked out, we didn't even have a whole bottle. I had a couple sips, you guys. I had a glass at the Cheesecake Factory, and for dinner. You would definitely not be sloshed off that. And if they were getting me sloshed at the Cheesecake Factory, then they are complicit in the crime. But no, that didn't happen. So then later when we went to the house, then he offered wine, this other guy, and we had one or two sips. That was it. Boom, lights out, honey. That is definitely something. Anyways, well, this time became drunk very quickly and appeared to fall asleep on the floor. The alcohol kicked in suddenly for Alice too. Normally, when you drink too much, you feel good for a while, right? Yeah, you're kind of like, unless you do the vodka thing, because I had the vodka thing. I felt good during the vodka thing. So we were like I was talking about this in our rehearsal studio. So we were rehearsing the band, and I was like all sharp and everything. And it was all done and everything. And I wasn't paying attention, and I was drinking vodka out of a water bottle, which is dumb. Don't ever do. I don't know why. I don't know. I was so busy. I wasn't thinking. And I was like, chug, chug, chug. And I'm talking. And then after everything was done, all of a sudden, I started feeling a little dizzy, and I didn't spike myself. It started to hit me, and I felt it. So then everybody left, and then I had to go lay down. I just went boom, and I felt it. But that's vodka. That's vodka. But, you feel something coming on, it's kind of that thing. You know what you're doing. Like, I can explain why it happened. It wasn't, oh, I had a couple sips of vodka and I just totally knocked out. Because then in that case, I would be like, I don't know what the hell. And then also, in the addition to that, if you drink a lot, one of the other things that happens is, because we're humans, it goes right through your system, right? So then you would be in the bathroom, right? That's just a common thing. Well, one of the indicators of knowing that you got spiked is because it's not liquid, right? And so for some reason, the next day you don't have any issues like that. Yes. So that's another indicator. And I just want other people to be educated on it, because we had it happen and I was so confused and I didn't know what the hell. So yeah, there was no explanation to that. So Zoe persuaded her it wouldn't be safe to take a taxi home in the state she was in. She told us, and asked her to take a nap in his bedroom. She says she agreed, knowing her friend was still also in the apartment, right? Yeah, so then the next thing she remembers is waking up and Zoe removing her trousers. I stopped him right away, explained how she then noticed a torchlight from a mobile phone above her head, and realized to her horror that he was filming her. What a total creep, right? I had one case when we were talking about this that I questioned if this went on. I didn't see it go on, but there's something in it where it made me feel that may have happened. Can't say it did, but it felt like that may have been included. So if it was included and somebody sees something, Alice describes trying to leave his bedroom, but aggressively yanked back from the doorway. Zoe used such strong force to keep her in the bedroom and had to cling on to the door frame with both of her hands. It was only when she threatened to scream for help that he let go. And then Zoe then telling her not to make a big deal of things or go to the police. So he knows what he's doing is wrong, you guys. This isn't a thing where they're so dumb. They're just doing something. It's just jokes. They have no idea it's wrong. He knows it's wrong. He's trying to downplay the situation. And so why would he say don't go to the police? Because he knows he's committing a crime. Zoe contacted Alice the next day on WeChat, and she says, but he made no mention of the previous night. He asked her to dinner, but she says she ignored him and they were never in touch again. Alice confided in a few close friends, but took things no further. And I thought that first you needed evidence, and second, something substantial had to have happened before you could call the police. No, but they're not going to do anything. You could have told them, I believe he taped the incident, but for them to get his phone, who are we dealing with? China or, LAPD. Both of them would just drop the ball. Alice says the next time she saw Zoe's face was nearly 4 years later in the media after he was charged by police. Okay, so they go to his house in this video. He gets arrested and he's playing dumb. Okay. It is challenging for foreign nationals to report sexual crimes in the UK, says Sarah Yee, a trust of Southeast and East Asian Women Association in London. How about here in California? It is. It's horrible. There was a bunch of women involved in this thing, and they were Asian women, and I can't tell you exactly all the countries they were from, okay? It would be daunting for anyone from overseas to be traumatized by rape and then have to navigate the British legal system, shit, the California LA legal system here, and the NHS, or even access the service provided for victims. They might not understand their rights or what resources are available to them, and as well as being concerned about repercussions, negative impacts on their studies, shame brought on themselves on and their from their families, and potential legal challenges. Okay, yeah, so that's an addition with Asian families and other families actually in other countries as well besides America. Yeah, so they have a shame thing. They'll sex shame the female and blame them, and then they just things like that. Just it's been a common thing in all these cultures, and it's been really terrible. So about a year after Alice said she was assaulted, she discovered that one of her male friends in London also knew Zou, but had cut all contacts because he found out Zou had been spiking women's drinks. Okay, so now the dude's like, I'm not hanging out with this dude. Okay, so what did he do about it? So why don't you guys put something on him? Okay, because women take all the, responsibility to this. So now a dude finds out, and then what does he do? He found out that he did that. So enough to sit there and not be friends with them. Okay, so the friend who the BBC is calling I don't know, told us he wasn't surprised at all when he heard Zou had been convicted. A lot of friends at the time probably knew what Zou was doing. I reckon some of our female friends knew too. Everybody knew. Everybody knew, you guys. Everybody knew. Z told us he accidentally drank from someone else's glass at a party in 22 and then became unwell and very sleepy. Zou then told him he had spiked the drink and he had meant it for a woman at the party to drink. Well, he could have reported it. So let's see what he did. He said Zou later showed him a small bag of drugs and asked if he wanted to collaborate with them. He said he took from this that Zou wanted to help find girls whose drinks he could spike, and he refused. I'm like, so is that okay? The BBC asked him why he had initially continued to see Zou and why he didn't go to the police. Yeah, because he got spiked, right? And he knew that he was doing it. So it should lie a lot on this man because he actually has all the details now that he knows he did it. He got spiked and he was trying to get him to get involved in a criminal activity together. So he told us they both had lots of mutual friends, so it was difficult not to socialize together. He says he did warn his friends about him, telling them not to hang out with him because he was drugging people. Yeah, so he knows as a matter of fact. It's not I heard, it's I know as a fact. So, unlike the women who are like, we don't really know what happened to us, this guy knew as a fact. I just want to stress that, okay? So he didn't like thinking about those memories, he says, and that's why he hasn't gone to the police. Okay, but you didn't get raped, okay? So I don't, like these excuses, I don't really fall for what this guy, he's trying to put himself more in a position like he's the victim. He's a victim of getting spiked, but the spiking wasn't meant for him, and then nothing happened to him when it happened to him, and he had all the information and he could have stopped him. Adding that he believed the women's testimonies were enough to convict him. Well, actually, this guy's testimony is king actually over any of us because he got the perpetrator to acknowledge and admit he was committing a major crime. That's hard to do. And so he got it, and then he sat on it. So this guy, I have an issue with. Don't you guys? Eventually, he says he did cut all ties with them. This is eventually. Why now? Okay, so, and yes, we know that victims will hang out with them and stuff, but what is the excuse here? And he wasn't that, I don't think he was that mad at it, to be honest, because if you were, you would have definitely, if you had all these girlfriends that you're like, I'm worried about all my friends, then why wouldn't you go report them? Like, what? I mean, I don't know. The excuse in here isn't good. It doesn't really explain his position, and he knows it as a matter of fact. So another young woman who had been in touch with police in London and China since his trial is Rachel. She says she was drugged and raped by him in 22 in his hometown of Dongguan in Guangdong province. Okay. Rachel told the BBC that she had gone on a date with them and they met online. She thought they were going to a bar, she says, but ended up at his home, a large villa, which though had described as one of his family's many properties. Yeah, a lot of these it's the craziest thing because I was talking about how like a lot of these Asian gang members are actually from very well off families, but the families are like these like hard workers, like they probably built up a company from the ground up and then they became successful and they make a lot of money off it. For some reason, their pile of shit sons turn into gang members and criminal and all this stuff. And it maybe it has to do with maybe the over focus on their business stuff and they don't pay attention to the kid and it's more like the neglect, right? Maybe there's something to do with that. There's an answer to it, but that is definitely what's happening within some of these family units, and it's really crazy to see this. But yes, so the family probably is like this hardworking family, bought a lot of properties. Maybe they run major businesses, and their son is a total f up. So they failed somewhere. Okay. Um, with his back turned to her, she says Zoe mixed her a green colored cocktail. They then started a drinking game. She experienced a wave of dizziness. Rachel has told UK police that Zoe took her up to a bedroom where she became unable to speak or move her body and then raped her. Yeah, these are situations I think a lot of us out here can relate to. Some of these situations, yes. And this guy is like such a common dude. She thought about calling the police the next day, but decided against it. She feared it would be very difficult to prove non-consent. Well, they should be proving consent. Like everything's ass backwards because, men. But it's hard for me to prove the fact that I was willing to go to his place for drinks. And that was not a signal that I was consenting to sex. Yeah, going to someone's place for drinks is not meaning anybody wants to sleep with anybody. Anybody out there going on like that is a disgusting rapist. I have chronically went with my friends to people's houses because they just want to party, and I'm kind of like the sidekick, and they have somebody to hang out with. So we've done this quite a bit. At no time at these parties do I want to hook up with any pile of shit that they know. But this was happening, throughout. And even then, I don't even think half of them wanted to be with any of the people at these parties either. The hindsight in a lot of this stuff is horrifying because I'm like, well, I don't think that was exactly the plan on some of these things because some of the stories, they're quite there's an array of some strange stuff. So I can't speak for them, but my perception of some of these things, they were definitely victims, and mostly when they were minors, they were definitely victims to the adults in this situation. And then there was some other things where, yeah, they were also minors, but then there was adults trying to separate us and do things and all that jazz. There was a lot of stuff in these stories. And I go, yeah, at the end of the day, it's the men plotting to do stuff, and they're trying to separate friends from friends from friends. You'll see in these stories here too, right? Like they're at the place with their friends, so the girls still get raped, even though their friend is in the vicinity, but they don't know about it, right? So they do things to separate them. So it could just be by a room. That's it. You get them into a different room, shut the door. That's it. Something happens. You can't be walking with your friends 24/7, nannying them. And so these men need to not be acting this way. But he was always a sociopath. This dude right here. So for some reason, his family, I'm going to put some blame on the family because he wouldn't be this way if the family wasn't this, neglectful to him. They could have also been very abusive. That these are things that are not being brought up, like when we're going through the story. Let me read this last line. She added that Dongguan in a small place, and there was always a risk that people she knew, her parents and colleagues, would find out and think she was indiscreet. And then we've seen Rachel's statement to the UK police, and she wants her story to be heard now. And she says to encourage more victims to come forward, and because she would like to see Zoe prosecuted in China as well as the UK. CDR Kevin Southworth who leads public protection at the Metropolitan Police, told BBC officers were still working their way through the 23 potential new cases, and that some of these people were definitely not identical to those featured in Zou's secret footage or from the charged cases so far. It speaks to the fact that his offending group is actually far greater than we had realized. A second trial for the convicted rapist has not been ruled out, and there's certainly a case to discuss with the Crown Prosecution Service, given the number of women coming forward. He wears a Rolex Submariner watch. Okay, the BBC also spoken to only 2 victims who police were able to identify ahead of the trial. Both are Chinese nationals who have been studying in London. The women got to know each other on social media after one of them, who we were calling Beth, posted about her experience. Beth was raped by Zhao in 2023 and tried to report the crime to Metropolitan Police soon afterwards. But then she decided not to pursue things because she felt unsure of the UK law and had been left feeling discouraged after initial interaction with the police, which included a poor translation of her 999 call, which I'm assuming is like 911 here. Okay, I don't know. But back when I didn't know Zou's name, I didn't know his address. I could only give general information. Okay, there's his watch. He's showing it off. Okay, yeah, this dude. Okay. In frustration, Beth posted a warning on social media about what happened to her. Another Chinese student, Clara, she says she immediately knew that was the same man who had drugged and raped her after a night out in London's Chinatown 2 years before. Every detail in Beth's post pointed to the same man. He has a Guangdong accent, and he looks honest, and he wears a Rolex Submariner watch. And the woman began to speak online, and Beth encouraged Claire to report what had happened to her to the police. Months later, police contacted Beth to say they were reinvestigating the case. Claire had come forward, and when on Zou's seized devices, police also found a video featuring Beth. The Met has since expressed regret over how it initially handled her allegations. Well, you guys are a bunch of pigs, right? Because when we come forward, that most of us are telling the truth. So, in these rare cases, there's some crazy mentally ill women or men, either, that might make up a story, but that's very rare. Some other men, I think, make up stories on other men to make them sound worse. You know, that I think there's some things going on here in the media with some other stuff. But anyway, without getting into that story, Clara describes a positive experience with British police. She said she didn't want to fly to London for the trial in case her parents found out. So the Met sent 2 officers to China to support her and gave evidence by video instead. The officers were assisted by the Chinese authorities, who have been working collaboratively with the Met and are very supportive. Okay. So I hope that can give some encouragement to victim survivors wherever they are in the world, that you are safe to come forward. Oh, God. Not every case is going to be treated equally. In addition to this time in London, Zou also studied in Belfast between 2017 and 19. Police do not know if his campaign of drug rape had already begun while he was there. Well, this is the thing with these guys. It's always been that way. So, since probably school, whenever he learned to do that. But he was always into rape. Like, he was always into being this person. He's a sociopath. So that's the mindset of the person that does this. And as we were reading, when they're talking about these practical jokers, that how they're deeply sadistic, the level of that is in here too. The mindset, it's connected and it's weird, but yeah, there's a big thing to that. So you could know a Zou before it even turns to this. And that's why I was saying, I go, we need to pay much more attention to these characteristics, mostly when they're younger, because it already comes out by that 8th grade thing. If it already showed up by 8th grade, it's too late. That's the truth of the story. So if it shows up by 8th grade, that general time period, somewhere in between those time periods, it's too late. It means the damage was already done. and you need to tackle it before then. So I don't know what the hell the problem was in his home life. It just could be the parents were just, they could have been very strict, overly strict and abusive. A lot of Asian households, they're very strict. They have a lot of high expectations. They could have been like that. They could have also been just very neglectful. They could have been, there could be a lot of things in this. The parents could have been doing stuff to him. A lot of things, you guys, and they don't go into the areas that you should know, like the things that are important in the story, which is that. It doesn't mean that they promote this conduct. It's that if it comes out of that neglect or being overly abusive or whatever, that thing is. And he was always like this. So then they're more neglectful by not catching it. And he's on this train to hell, right? You're just watching this kid be a pile of shit the whole time. And then he's going to be in prison for the rest of his life. It's just this thing. It's there. But if you're neglectful and you don't pay attention to your kids, then you would miss all that, right? So to me, it seems like the parents are just majorly neglectful, or they're also really abusive and they're really down with this kind of crap. We don't know. It just gets totally thrown off in the story. For him to be doing that, he was always doing something. Just put it that way. He was always doing something. He may have changed his MO, like, oh, I found out we could use this drug in a drink. Beth, who gave her evidence in court in London, says it was only afterwards that she realized that she and Clara were the only two women to have helped convict him. I thought for a long time I wasn't an important part of the case. She's glad she testified and encouraged other women to come forward. If you have any information about this story and you would like to share with us, please get in touch. Contact the BBC. And yeah, so basically if you run into this dude anywhere in the world and some weird thing happened and you questioned it, we all know, because it's like when it happens, it's so like, what the hell just happened? And then people don't come forward. But don't you like his designer crap? He's going to be running around. He's a narcissist. He's like, money. That's all it means to me. Like his family, you could tell there's this affluent thing going on. And these guys were so bad. Like when I was working at my job, these guys were so bad. Like their parents are off working, right? Now they may have jobs and everything, but they were just involved with all the worst things. So they have they have an excess of money. They would go gambling, and they were gambling addicts. They were, addicted. Some of them were really addicted to harming women. They got off on it. They ran out and did other crimes. I can't tell you everything they got involved in, but a lot of times they get involved in drugs. Yeah, so I was very educated on the culture and some of the bad parts of the culture. It wasn't like, oh, the whole culture's like this, but there's this part of the culture that it's just like, what the hell, dude? It's like not the same story that you hear when you're talking about people of color and they get involved in gangs and they were raised out in, say the projects are in these poor areas, and, you hear that story, right? That whole thing. No, in this culture here, it's totally different. They're rich, affluent pieces of shit, and they get involved in gang banging, and it's male supremacist shit, right? It has nothing to do with being poor. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's a mindset. They want community, and then he thinks he's important. You could tell it's this affluent asshole, and it's just like, what the hell? Yeah. And then he goes out raping everybody, and their culture's so conservative that they don't even talk about like just sex generally, but this isn't even about that. This is about no consent, no agency. I'm just going to do crazy stuff against everybody's will and yada yada. But their culture doesn't have these conversations so much because it's like, oh, we don't talk about those things. That's their culture, okay? And again, there's going to be these outliers that, their families do talk and everything else. But generally speaking, no, they were very like, hee. And if you ask them about like in the culture in Japan, how the men act like children, I was like, yeah, I mean, but I wonder why, because they had the AOC at 13. Can you get any more gross over there? Yeah, it wasn't only until recently they upped it a little bit. Still not up enough. But, Yeah, there's a lot to be said. Like, there's a lot of people that don't really understand these cultures or understand, like, the differences in them. Like, they're still the same. Like, they're the same, but it's just a different conversation about it. Like, here, there's a bunch of men that go after children, right? Over there, it's like, oh, we made it legal to the point of 13. And then they're very kid-like when you talk to these men. It's so ridiculous. Like, I could just go on this whole thing about it. I don't run into too many American men that act like that, and if they do, I know they're a predo, okay? But yeah, so there's this thing about that. Um, but I thought I'd talk about this because it's touching on what that same topic I keep talking about, where like you need to care about them in other countries as well as how they're being, because they do travel. And we're talking about that thing in Thailand and stuff like that. It's unfortunate there's this massive earthquake. That was horrible. But we're talking about the thing where the men were leaving from America and going and preying on children in Thailand. And then in Thailand, there was a lot of abuse that was going on over there on kids and stuff like that. And then and a lot of other types of abuses of human trafficking and weird stuff. But yeah, so when you start hitting into these areas, it's like they all need to be hit up, because if you want to actually, clean this whole thing up, you have to tackle it everywhere. And everybody has to be on board with the same thing. Because nobody should be going, oh, you can rape some kids here in our country at 13, and then you expect them to come here into this country and think there's a problem with them going after kids. Why are they attracted to kids over there in the first place? These are the questions. So that has to do with upbringing. And so them coming here wouldn't change because you said it's illegal to do that. They still want to go after some kids. So vice versa, things that were going on back and forth across the globe. But anyway, if you were a victim of him, contact the people below. And I mean, he could be any of the guys that came into our club. He definitely didn't run across me. This guy, how old is he? Do they say? Did you not put his age in here? Wait. This is my bad son that went straight to hell. Okay, so yes, so that was important because Gen X is so atrociously terrible and they're a bunch of rapists, okay? So if your parents are from the pro-rapist generation and they have another kid, they have a kid, they're more than likely going to come out this piece of crap. Just saying, unless you were very up on top of this whole mentality, which most people were not, mostly not in Gen X. I was pretty early, I think, on the topic because I was raped to shit, very young. So even then, like trying to tackle like what the mindset was has taken a long time. We understand it now. We're starting to really understand it. So that's how I was looking at it, because to me it has importance, mostly if anybody's into this sociopathy thing, the whole topic on psychopathy and everything. The generation that they're coming out of, it's just like the next generation. That this one's that. So he came up at a time where there was nothing in his childhood that would have said, you should be pro consent, because they didn't teach agency and they were not teaching agency in that way. They were just saying, don't rape, I mean, women, you need to protect yourself. They were doing that thing. So for this guy to come out the way he is, it's no surprise. I'm just saying, it's no surprise. So yes, he could be my hellion son. I would have been in my early 20s and he would have been my hellion son at that time. So thank God we did not have no kids. Like no kids at that time. But that's what that means. Okay. I am finished with the story for now. But again, if you're a victim of this, you know what? Step up. And mostly dudes, we need to put the pressure on the dudes. In this story, the most guilty party that knew about this criminal is the guy. His guy friend. His guy friend is guilty. It's like knowing that somebody murdered somebody you just found out and then you said nothing. And then they went and murdered a bunch of other people and then you're like, well, I stayed friends with them still for a long time, and then I didn't even go and tell the cops, So wouldn't they make him complicit in that crime? I don't know, but that's how I look at it. But that's the guy friend. He knew. It's not even a question he didn't know. He knew exactly what he was doing. He did nothing about it. That's the guiltiest person in this story, too, beyond the guy who did it.